What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and last week we did our top 5 breakout running backs, our top 5 breakout wide receivers, and this week we're going to be kind of doing the opposite of that. We're going to get a little bit more negative this week because we're going to give you top 5 running backs that I will not be drafting. I want to give you guys the warning signs of why I'm not touching these running backs and why you shouldn't be drafting them in your leagues. Now, before we get into that, I know a lot of you guys out there are using my draft strategies, hero RB, zero RB, bimodal RB, and I'm hearing a lot of you guys say, I have a draft coming up and I want to try one of these out. I'm telling you guys, don't wait for your home league to try one of these strategies out if you're not, used to something like a zero RB strategy. The best place to practice for fantasy football is not, a mock draft on Sleeper or Yahoo where you can go on there and everybody's auto picking their drafts by the time you're at like round 5. If you hop on Underdog, it's a best ball platform. You hop on there for like $5 drafts. You can actually get in there and see what a real draft room is like with money on the line. So no one's auto picking. So no funny business is going on. Literally for $10, use my promo code RON when you deposit for a $25 bonus. So you can go in there. You can run up 7 $5 drafts because we're getting a $35 total value, and you can just go out there and experiment a little bit with money on the line. Now, before we get into the video, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm critical.
The first guy we're going to talk about, I know you guys are not going to be happy, but we're talking about Ezekiel Elliott. I think the 105 price tag is a little bit hefty for me personally. And you guys know, all the guys that are out there subscribed to the channel know that I'm chasing these legendary upside seasons at running back. This is a term coined by Pat Kerrane. And 20% win rate means that a player is drafted on 5 teams. He wins 1 out of every 5 of those. So 20% win rate. And guys that have done this before are Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey in 2018 and 2019, Todd Gurley in 2017. And these guys usually hover around the 23 PPR point per game type area. And the reason we chase this is because it's the only aspect where running backs are edging out wide receivers. If you can hit on one of those running backs, you're getting a massive edge over those wide receivers. If not, then running back and wide receiver scoring is pretty even. And on top of that, we want to chase that upside because of the low floor that running backs have. There is no such thing as floor when it comes to running backs. I'm going to put this chart on the screen. Again, this is Pat Kerrane's. As you can see, running backs in round 1 bust at a high rate, almost double that of wide receivers. So we only want to take that risk if we have a path to that monster upside, and I just don't see it personally with Ezekiel Elliott. These are his win rates over the last 4 years. He's only returned an 8.3% or better twice, and only once has he actually cracked a 10% win rate. Now, I say 8.3% because 1 divided by 12 is 8.3%. So he has only done better than average or about average twice, and he's only cracked 10% once. That's nowhere near a 20% win rate. He has never been a legendary upside type running back. He's only ever been decent. And then we come into last year, 2020. He put up a 2.7% win rate. And I understand the offense kind of crumbled around him, but he genuinely sucked. And the problem is that we're getting no discount. He could have been a great running back last year, and he'd still be the 105. He's right next to Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry had rushed for 2,000 rushing yards last year. We were getting no discount on Ezekiel Elliott. You'd think, okay, so Ezekiel Elliott was bad last year. He'd be getting pushed back. He was literally the RB14. Why do I have to pay the 105 for the RB14? And I just have pause. I have pause putting him back up to the RB5 because we're now in year 6 with Ezekiel Elliott. The chances of him bouncing back as an aging running back is tough. And I've been on record this season fading Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry at cost. But at the very least, if you want to draft those guys, I honestly cannot blame you because they are talented players. They are genuinely elite football players. And I'm not so sure about Ezekiel Elliott. I genuinely have talent concerns when it comes to Ezekiel Elliott. And I think you guys are going to push back on that. But we've seen a decline in Zeke's play, not just last year. And you can give him a pass for last year, but even in 2019, he showed signs that he's slowing down. This is a chart where it takes yards created over expectation per attempt. So it literally just isolates the running back and the stats that he is putting up. And he is on there low on that list. You can see Chubb and Derrick Henry firmly in the top 5 as the league's best runners. In terms of pure rushing, Ezekiel Elliott is not the same talent of a Dalvin Cook, as a Nick Chubb, as a Derrick Henry. Pure runners of the football that are very good at what they do. Ezekiel Elliott is not that. So Ezekiel Elliott has this profile where he is completely hinged on his workload, the offense that he's in. Obviously, the Cowboys are a top 5 scoring offense. So he is almost, to me, a glorified dead zone running back where you're paying up for situation and workload and you're not paying for talent. And again, I'm not saying that Zeke can't be a top 5 to 7 running back as advertised in fantasy, but because we know that running backs bust at a high rate and we can't aim for floor, and there's other running backs in that area that have that legendary upside, I'm personally not taking him there. Now, I have him as my 112 as my RB8. I don't think that is egregious. That's just where I'm comfortable taking Ezekiel Elliott. I don't get him at the 105. I still think he's a first round pick. I still have him as a top 8 running back. I just can't pay the price that you guys are asking me to. Then we got another fan favorite. And I want to say, before you guys come at me, I know the fantasy community loves Ezekiel Elliott, and I know they love Najee Harris. Before you guys come after me in the comments, first, hear me out. And second, if you want to rebuttal what I'm about to say, don't come at me and say, I got a big nose and my glasses look stupid. Let me know genuinely what your argument is for taking these guys at ADP. I have Najee Harris as a late second, early third type back. He is going at the 203 right now on most fantasy sites. Personally, I can't take him over DeAndre Hopkins. I cannot take him over Calvin Ridley, and I cannot take him over Antonio Gibson. Those are three guys I'm very firm I will not be taking him over. And I understand that Najee Harris is locked in for 300 plus touches, and I get that. But like I said, I'm not aiming for these floor plays because I don't chase projected volume, and I think that floor for running back is overrated. And I know people want to preach floor with their first picks, but I think that especially at running back, it's a flawed way of thinking because running backs bust at a high rate in the first 2 rounds, about a 35% clip in round 2. So if there's no such thing as floor and these picks are busting at a 35% rate, why are we aiming for floor? If 35% of your picks are busting in the second round at running back, why aim for floor? A 35% bust rate already shows that there is no floor in this range. It needs to be a home run. And personally, I don't see how Najee Harris gets to a home run. This is going to be a pass-heavy offense. They're going to have the toughest schedule in the league, and there's going to be no leads where Najee Harris is going to churn things out. And that would be good in a sense because there would be garbage time. He'd have a lot of targets, but they have Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and Juju Smith-Schuster. 3 legit wide receivers in the NFL. So there's no way that Najee gets 100-plus targets where he's just like this target hog. I don't think that's his profile anyways, but it takes away that path to that upside. Then we have the Steelers' offensive line. They project to be a bottom 5 offensive line, which matters a lot for efficiency. And it's really bad news for Najee Harris because he's never been in this situation before. I talked about this during draft season. If you guys have been sticking around with me since then, his standout years at Alabama. So his first 2 years, he wasn't even a starter. He was behind Josh Jacobs. I think he was even behind Damien Harris. And 2019, 2020, he became the starter. But ever since he's been there, they have had the 2nd and 9th best run blocking unit in the Power 5 in those 2 years. And he's seen multiple NFL talents on the offensive line. Jedrick Wills, Alex Leatherwood, Evan Neal, who's a projected top 5 pick next year, Landon Dickerson, Deontay Brown, stud offensive lineman. He's not having that same type of running lanes on the Steelers. And there's a really good stat out there, yards created by Graham Barfield. He actually looks at how many yards are being blocked for each of these running backs. And Najee Harris had 1.8 yards blocked per attempt, which was in the 90th percentile. He was getting all of the help possible from his offensive line. And when you have 1.8 yards blocked per attempt, that is 31% of all of Najee Harris's rushing yards in his final season came from his offensive line. He will not see that this year. So now 31% of his rushing yards came from his offensive line. Now you're putting him behind a bad offensive line in the NFL. And on top of that, he doesn't have the skill set to overcome a bad offensive line. He is not Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley, his rookie year, had a bad offensive line, but he's this explosive 4-4 type runner, and he breaks off long plays where he can go -1, -2, and then break one off for 60. Najee Harris is not that guy. He was outside the top 50 in breakaway run percentage despite the huge wide running lanes from Alabama. So if he's getting the blocking in the lanes and he still can't break them for big gains, I'm not sure how he does that in the NFL. And I'm not hearing the type of stuff where, Saquon was great, Ezekiel Elliott was great. Those guys were top 5 picks in the NFL. Najee Harris is not that level of prospect. He also came out as a senior, which is a red flag. He was picked outside the top 20. So you can't compare him to those guys. If you want to compare him to anybody, the 3 running backs since 2015 to be picked in the first round outside of the top 20 and picked inside of the top 3 rounds in fantasy drafts were Melvin Gordon, CEH, and Josh Jacobs. Their win rates, 4.5%, 7%, and 7.1%. This is a trap. These win rates are bad. It's just the new shiny toy. Everyone wants to get that rookie running back. You are getting low-end RB1 production with bad efficiency, bad volume, as the fantasy stock exchange boys say. If you want to chase bad volume, just get Joe Mixon at the end of the second round, early third. And if you want to just get somebody that is projected volume and has a floor of like a low-end RB1, go grab Chris Carson a round or so later. I don't understand the allure of Najee Harris. He is on almost none of my teams this year. He will be on none of my season-long teams. He's in some of my best ball leagues, but that's about it. Then we have the easiest pick on this whole list, and I can't believe he's going at the 509. Mike Davis. Mike Davis is literally, if I was to make a dead zone running back in a lab, it would be Mike Davis. He's being drafted purely on the surrounding factors that, there's no one behind him, the scheme of Arthur Smith. But when we really get down to business, Mike Davis is a career backup. He has never done anything besides last year. These things don't usually go well, where a running back who doesn't have a track record of being great or talented. Like, how many times has a 28-year-old running back just been thrusted into a starting role and became some league winner, became a great RB1? It doesn't happen often. And I think that we kind of forget what happened last year, and we have a little bit of rose-colored lenses when it comes to Mike Davis. He went from 17.62 points per game from weeks 2 through 7 to 10.1 points per game in his next 9 games. If you had Mike Davis down the stretch last year, which I did in some places, he was not good, even though he was getting that workload. And plenty of players in the NFL have run hot before. You know, there's plenty of guys that have just put together 5, 6, 7 games or even like 10 games where, you know, you have Gary Barnidge and Peyton Hillis. I think Mike Davis is one of those guys where he had his season, he did well, and I'm not drafting a guy. We are really just drafting him because the guys have their spreadsheets. They say, all right, there's no one behind Mike Davis. Let's lock him in for an RB1 workload. They could trade for somebody. They could pick somebody up. He could get supplanted by literally anybody in that backfield. I know Quadri Olison isn't that great, but neither is Mike Davis. And my biggest reason to fade Mike Davis is when he's going at the 509 in most leagues in the 5th round, you are passing on Chase Claypool, you are passing on T. Higgins, and Brandon Ayuk. Please do not do that. Do not pass on those wide receivers for a Mike Davis. I don't care if you don't have an RB2. I don't care if you don't have an RB1. Do not pass on Claypool, Higgins, or Ayuk for a Mike Davis. And another gripe I have with ADP is Damien Harris. He's going at the 705, and I can't get there. And this was recorded on the day where Cam Newton got cut. I think his ADP is probably going to rise into the 6th round at this point, and I can't get there. I love that everyone's so certain that this is the year where the Patriots are different. They're going to future an RB1, and it's going to be Damien Harris. Do you guys not remember? In like the 4th, 5th, 6th round, we've done this before. We did that with Dion Lewis. We did that with Mike Gillislee. There have been plenty of these Patriots running backs where they are the RB1 or like perceived RB1, and they end up letting us all down. This team, the Patriots, Bill Belichick, he's known for running a committee. He's done this every single year. Why would we pay up for Damien Harris, especially because of his profile? We want guys that get goal line carries and pass catching work. Damien Harris got some of the goal line carries, but he has caught 5 receptions in his 2-year career, and he's only scored 2 touchdowns. Now, I think that he gets some more touchdowns this year in a goal line back role, but I don't know why you would pay up for Damien Harris when you can simply just get Ronald Jones 2 rounds later. He's on a better team. He's in the same exact role where he's going to get the between the 20s touches and some of the goal line work, and he's going to score more touchdowns on a really high-scoring offense. Why would you pay up for Damien Harris? Like, I don't understand what his ceiling looks like because he's not going to catch passes. It's not going to be a high-scoring offense. I just don't know what you're paying for. I think the production you get from a Damien Harris can just be replicated off waivers by like week 2, week 3. And he has a tough road ahead of him, Damien Harris, because we have Ramondre Stevenson, who looked great in preseason to the point where they trade away Sony Michel. I think Sony Michel getting traded away says more about Ramondre Stevenson than it does about Damien Harris. Ramondre Stevenson is going to work on the goal line. He's great in pass protection. He's great on 3rd downs. He's great between the tackles. Ramondre Stevenson is a legit NFL football player. Then you have James White, who's always been a great receiving back. So Damien Harris is now squeezed by a guy who's going to make this a committee. He's squeezed by the guy who's going to have all the receiving down work. And then you also have J.J. Taylor, who's going to work in. And it becomes this 4-headed monster where at the price you're paying for Damien Harris, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So again, I'm telling you, if you're going to draft Damien Harris, just wait a few rounds, grab Ronald Jones. He offers the same exact utility to your team. Now, you guys know how much I love Javonte Williams. I've been talking him up all offseason. And the flip side of that is Melvin Gordon. He's going at the 801. I could not imagine using a 7th or 8th round pick on Melvin Gordon. The team has clearly told us that they're going to move on. They don't believe in Melvin Gordon as the future back. And we saw that when the Broncos traded up to the 35th overall pick. They leapfrog Miami and they trade up for a running back. That's how bad they wanted Javonte Williams. And I think that this situation feels very similar to Carlos Hyde and Nick Chubb in 2018. It was Nick Chubb's rookie year. He gets drafted in the early 2nd, and Carlos Hyde gets overdrafted, and he's like the presumed starter for week 1. And that evaporates by like week 4. You can see on this on the screen here, we have the game logs. He hovers around like a 60% snap share, and he eventually loses grip by week 4. And I think this is what happens to Melvin Gordon. I think Melvin Gordon is going to come into the season. He's going to give you maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks of RB2 production. And I think Javonte eventually takes over because Javonte Williams is a legit talented running back. He's going to command a 55, 60% snap share. And we're going to see Melvin Gordon go down to like a 40, 45% snap share. And that becomes a running back who's not startable, who's borderline droppable. And Javonte Williams, people want to sleep on Javonte Williams. From a prospect standpoint and from a redraft standpoint, Javonte Williams has everything going for him. First of all, Miami traded up for Javonte. We know that if a team trades up, they give that running back more opportunity in year 1. They score more points in year 1. Then he also checks off the box, Javonte Williams, of J.J. Zacharyason's ambiguous backfield theory, where we have Javonte going in round 6, we have Melvin Gordon going in round 8, and usually when that happens, the RB1 is the breakout running back by a long, long margin. And Javonte Williams is not just some random rookie. He is a legit prospect in a vacuum. And I swear to God, in a vacuum, if he gets drafted to the Steelers and Najee Harris gets drafted to the Steelers, give me Javonte Williams in that role. I think Javonte Williams, independent of draft capital, if they both go first round, I would have had Javonte Williams over Najee Harris. He is that good of a prospect. And the fact that he came out at such a young age, he got drafted at the age of 20. That's a massive indicator. Now, why is that? That's because if you get drafted early, it means that you're better at a younger age and you're more of a dominant player. If you can get drafted in the second round at 20 and someone else gets drafted in the second round at 22, you are better in your trajectory. You are still growing. You are still getting better as a player. And this leads to more early career production. On this chart, we see that running backs have a better fantasy point over expected in their first 2 seasons when they are 20 years old on draft day, and it isn't close. These guys who come out very young at 20 years old, this is why Najee Harris coming out at like 22, 23 is a red flag. The fact that he came out at 20 years old means that he is going to be efficient. He's going to be good early on. This is a massive red flag for Melvin Gordon. You are essentially taking Melvin Gordon to be a back-end RB2 for a couple weeks and eventually lose that job. We know the rookie running backs. We saw it with J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram last year. They are going to eventually take over that role. You are playing in a race against time with Melvin Gordon, and I don't understand why you take him, especially because he has no upside. So his whole role, he has a role for maybe 3, 4, 5, if you want to push it, 8 weeks. There's no path for him to have this huge upside. There is no world where Melvin Gordon has RB1 upside. He's like 28, 29 at this point. He's past his prime. Remember, he is like a similar age as Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley, both guys that aren't on teams right now. So I don't understand why we're taking Melvin Gordon in the 8th round besides literally just home league tacos, knowing the name. And that's going to do it for us today, fellas. Make sure if you don't want to draft these running backs, if you don't want to end up with them on your teams, in my rankings at patreon.com/Ron Stewart's in the description, it's in the comments. I have these running backs in places on my rankings so that I don't end up with them. I don't want these guys on my teams. I think the early guys don't have pass to a elite upside. I think the other guys I went over are dead zone running backs that don't offer any upside, don't offer any appeal to take them over the wide receivers in that range. And on the Patreon, you can get my top 250 and 1 quarterback in Superflex leagues that has all of my tiers. You also get an exclusive spot in the Discord where you can ask me one-on-one trade advice, fantasy advice, waiver wire advice, start sit, all of that good stuff and more. Now we're going to be live streaming every single night from now until kickoff on Thursday Night Football. So make sure you check out those live streams. We're going to be on Underdog Draft and we're going to be having a good old time, man. And I want to thank you guys. We just hit 3.5K subscribers. The growth we have been seeing the past 2-3 weeks has been insane. We have gained, the Basement Mafia has gained more subscribers this past month than I have the last year. It's crazy, man. It's crazy. So if you're new here, I'm going to be pumping out content daily, sometimes more than daily. We're live streaming every night. A lot of good things going on here. So make sure you go down below, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, leave a like, and also let me know in the comments if you disagree with any of these. And again, give me a legit argument for your side of the story. And like I said, that's going to be it for today. As always, I will see you guys in the next one.
Yup.